Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Michael Crossan.
I'm Gabe Shenhar.
So today we are talking about our first experiences with our purchased 2025 Nissan Armada. So it's been many years since the Armada was redesigned, and the thought was it's a bit more sophisticated than it was before, but it was pointed out in our early road tests that the price has not gone up too much since its last redesign, or last year's, around $57,000 for the SV trim two-wheel drive, $59,000 for the all-wheel four-wheel drive, but that price quickly climbs. We purchased a four-wheel drive SL, and that came in at $75,155. So it quickly climbs up, overlaps with the more prestigious Infiniti QX80. Ours was assembled in Kyushu, Japan, for those of you who are of interest. And this is a big vehicle, and this competes up there with the Suburbans and the Tahoes and the Sequoias of the world. So, Gabe, let's start with the changes in the powertrain. So, bit different than it was.
Yeah, it's the current trend is going to smaller engines, and here too, these vehicles are in this class. A lot of them have lost their old V8s in favor of turbo V6s. Interestingly, GM, the Tahoe Suburban, GMC Yukon still have non-turbo V8s, and actually they have 68% of that category between Tahoe Suburban and GMC Yukon, and the rest is scraps. Expedition and Wagoneer and Sequoia and Armada has like single-digit market share in there. But anyway, it's the Armada is kind of an interesting vehicle. It's in other parts of the world it's sold as the Nissan Patrol. And the luxury version is the Infiniti QX80, of course, which climbs up to six-figure price range, and competing with Cadillac Escalade and the likes. So yeah, but I will say that the powertrain is fantastic. That V6 turbo, 9-speed automatic. I mean, it's punchy. It's effortless. It's quiet. No delays. The shifts are smooth. So this is where Nissan really shines here.
Yeah, there were some comments I know in the logbook that Armada loyalists who were in the big V8 will probably not miss it because it's so good. Mike,
I'd like a lot of motor in a car, and I didn't really miss the V8 in this.
Yeah.
The twin turbo 6 moves a lot of air, and it moves this big vehicle pretty well.
Yeah. I think you noted two other things. Well, one, in general, this was the high point of this car, was the powertrain. But it's also very quiet. Like, it moved it effortlessly and smoothly, but it was a really quiet cabin.
It is, yeah. I just spent a lot of time in it last weekend, had the whole family in it.
Yeah.
Ran a bunch of errands, put stuff in the back, and everyone was like, this is comfortable and quiet. They sort of saw it and sort of shock of the overall size, and like, oh, we're spending the weekend in a truck.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't that experience.
Yeah, not at all. Again, to Gabe's point, it's a twin turbo 3.5 V6 paired with a 9-speed auto. So, and it's really, really good. I think back, there used to be, we used to play this game of, if you could build a car from scratch, what elements would you take of all the cars we had tested and put together? And I remember years ago, and you'll know this too, it was the 3.5 V6 Nissan, not turbo. I don't think it was a twin turbo, but a 3.5 V6 Nissan engine was so good. And they had it in so many models, so maybe we see that again here. But again, they definitely got the powertrain right. Disadvantages, though, EPA fuel economy right now, of course, we'll test it, 17 miles per gallon, nearly a 24-gallon tank, premium fuel. So I was like, whoa, this is going to be a $100 bill every time you fill up this Armada for sure. But yeah. So
yeah, there's a price for everything.
And it's big. And we use the words land yacht.
Yes.
So Mike, let's talk about the handling. This is a body on frame still.
It is.
So suspension
kind of like
handling.
a pickup truck. And land yacht is a good word for it. I might have made the family call me Admiral all weekend
you did. Good.
as we were driving this.
As they should.
Yeah, they weren't enjoying that. But independent rear suspension, which really helps. The back doesn't hop around on bumpy roads like a lot of pickup trucks do. And our vehicle, at least how we optioned it, has a lot of sidewall on the tire, which really helps as well. The
they didn't go to a low profile.
Yeah, not low
yet, or at least
profile
not
rubber
on ours.
band. So
Yep.
it absorbs a lot of the heavy shocks out on the road. But I think the disadvantage there is you do get some sort of shudder as that big rubber balloon of a tire kind of reverberates. You do feel that. I think it's a decent trade-off, though. I'd rather feel that. I kind of mentioned it. My passengers did not feel it, but as a driver, I was aware of it. But it absorbs bumps pretty well. And new for this one, too, they call it the Pro 4X,
Right.
which is Nissan's off-road package. And they've had it on the pickup trucks and things like that. But there's a lot here. This sort of makes this big vehicle kind of a legitimate off-roader, at least for a lot of mild duty things that most people probably do. But it has adaptive air suspension, which is great. So you can raise and lower, and it helps for getting in and out and things like that, because it is a bit of a climb up.
Higher trims.
Yeah. So, it comes with all-terrain tires and 20-inch wheels if you get this Pro 4X.
Right.
So there's a lot of sort of adaptability, or you can make a lot of different options, and kind of tailor this to yourself. But like we said, price does go up as you add more options. So that is something to consider.
I thought Powertrain and Ride were so good. Gabe, any thoughts on?
And the handling is pretty relatively decent for that kind of vehicle. I mean, there isn't any excessive body roll or anything like that. And the fact that it's independent rear suspension really helps. I mean, there are some occasions where you feel like that shudder that Mike mentioned before, but it's in our car at least on the traditional conventional suspension that's not air suspension. It's pretty civilized.
Yeah, in the logbook, couple things. One was steering doesn't have great feel, numb, slow, as you might expect.
Yep.
But to your points, it drove smaller than it is.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it.
That idea that it drove smaller than it actually is. So I thought that was good. In terms of safety, there's a lot going on here of options. Certainly the standards that we would want and expect with the automatic emergency braking, pedestrian detection, blind spot warning, lane departure warning. I will say that the lane departure warning, I don't know if it's because it's so wide anyway, you're already sitting on the lane lines. It was going off all of the time on secondary roads for me. Yep. Thankfully, it's a low volume buzz, if you will, vibration and a wheel vibration. But oh my gosh. I felt like I was just touching lines all the time. I
left that on all weekend and same thing. But I thought it was one of the more sort of pleasant sort of tones to make you aware that you've kind of deviated from your lane.
As the driver, you're aware, but it's not going ding, ding, ding and torturing your passengers, or like you said, your family was in there. So 3 levels, and forgive me, I'm going to read these because I don't want to mess them up. 3 levels of driver assistance. So starting with Pro Pilot Assist, the basic on the SV and the Pro 4X, adaptive cruise control, lane centering assistance. SL Platinum and Platinum Reserve Pro Pilot Assist 1.1, V1.1, that has proactive speed adjustments based on your navigation. It can kind of say what's coming and adapt. And again, now optional Pro Pilot Assist 2.1, available on SL and Platinum Reserve, which allows for hands-free driving on the highway. We paid $33.70 for this option for the 2.1. So from a safety perspective, there are elements of the 2.1 that we appreciated. Direct driver monitoring. It had some color coding in the dash and the heads-up display that kind of are telling the driver what mode they're in. Are you hands-free or are you hands-on? One universally thing was this suggested lane change assist, and I know you have a story that people said was kind of a mess.
Yeah. Pro Pilot Assist 2.1 is the Nissan's hands-free system, which I find not nearly as well developed as similar systems from GM, from Ford, from BMW, from Mercedes, Toyota as well.
Yeah.
The lane change, at least it doesn't execute the lane change for you because it only suggests that, and it's to me, it did it when there was a big truck closing in on me on the left.
You would never have made that lane change on your own.
I would have never made that.
Yeah.
So, I was not really comfortable with that hands-free system as I am. And certainly, I've said it before, I mean, I love GM's Super Cruise and some other systems that allow you to really drive hands-free, and it does lane changes for you, and it's a major stress reliever on highway driving.
Yep. And there were others that said, good thing the lane change is only a suggestion, because if I'd follow it, I would have probably been in trouble. Another element, too, of that was visibility aids. So inherently, this is a really big vehicle, and particularly forward. Huge square hood, big, thick pillars, A-pillars particularly as they flare out at the bottom. From a rearward and sideward, I'll just say that for a minute, visibility, it was actually okay.
It was big side windows.
Yes.
And pretty good side view mirrors, and just a lot of visibility if you do the head check.
Yeah.
I had no trouble with it. It is a big vehicle, but out on like the highway and stuff, it feels smaller. But in parking lots, it does feel pretty big, or in like a tight driveway situation.
Yeah.
But again, you appreciate the big mirrors, the big side windows.
Low belt lines, I thought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty good visibility out the back.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of camera views too, which is
that's
helpful.
Yeah. So this 360-degree camera from the ProPilot 2.1, Intelligent AWD view is what they call. I thought it was great. And so clear. Like the cameras just keep getting better and better. Kind of that bird's eye view. My kid used to say, is there a helicopter over top of us? But yeah, really nice visibility aids to help. We'll have to see. I do that evaluation when I put the pedestrian child target. If that comes on when you shift to drive, it'll be exactly what we would want from a vehicle where you clearly aren't going to be able to see directly.
Yeah, one thing about the invisible hood, it's a great feature. I mean, it comes on automatically when you're in four-wheel drive, in low range and off-road modes. But I think that the main help here is, the hood's so large and so square and so tall, and in some urban situations, it can obscure a pedestrian or two.
Easy.
Absolutely.
Easy.
And I think that, you can trigger it yourself if you press the button camera. But I think in low speeds, it automatically should come on, and in reverse or in situations where it senses that you have some objects or obstacles ahead of you.
Or even parking.
So,
people were like, I would like it parking.
Yeah, I parked sort of like one of those diagonal pull in on like a main street situations, and I wasn't quite sure I was in the space. So, put the camera on so I could use the overhead view to make sure I was in the space. But it would be nice, to Gabe's point, I've signaled, I've slowed down. I think it can make the assumption that I'm either parking or maneuvering, and that should come up.
Give you that view,
to kind of just give you a little more support, because it is a big vehicle at the end of the day.
So while it's marketed as an off-road feature, it really has much more practical uses, I think. And like you say, we paid for, or I said we paid for that 2.1. Yeah. I would love the visibility aid part to be standard on such a vehicle where you're not going to be able to see inside. So a lot going on in terms of safety and options for that. Let's talk about inside.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And some people said pretty nice for Nissan, but I think it's just pretty nice in general.
Yeah.
But ours, I think, definitely is approaching the Infiniti level of sort of appointments and luxury. The front seats were described as being like a lazy boy recliner almost. Super comfy and plush. Yeah. I think everybody was pretty comfortable in them. Some people did feel that the backrest was a little bit too sort of sculpted and contoured.
Yeah, the bolsters are quite large.
Yeah, so I think, depending on your height and body type and things like that. But overall, weren't a whole lot of complaints about seat comfort from the vehicle.
Did you fit? You're broader.
Yeah.
I fit between those bolsters, so I was quite happy. But did you?
It was okay. I think I probably laid the seat backrest back just a couple of degrees more than I might otherwise, just to kind of, so I'm sitting up out of the seat just a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I didn't have any issues with it. Just sort of played around with it when I first got in there, got comfortable, and it was the last time I thought about it.
Yeah. And power tilt. Sorry, Gabe.
Yeah, no, I agree. Seats are comfortable, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my pet peeve that it doesn't have four-way lumbar support for a $75,000 vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does, and I know you need it and you actually actively look for it. When I don't have it and it's not right, I do miss it. The up and down part, because I do use it myself. I also think you mentioned it, Mike, the fit and finish. When you open that door, I think you immediately go, this is really nice. I called it, you'll appreciate this. The mocha, we have like a mocha espresso colored interior. It's a two-tone. It looks so good. I did look it up. It's actually called chestnut with rye. But I think it looks really nice stitching. I think it bumps up, to your point, against the QX80 in terms of fit and finish. No?
Yeah, it could be.
So,
I think the QX80 has like more screens and things like that.
Yeah.
Which isn't always a good thing.
No.
So I think this does feel pretty upscale.
Yeah. So access, it's a climb.
It is.
You already mentioned it. I think the vertical shape of the doors helps. Has running boards, but
Yeah,
you're going to need them. Yeah.
You know, in the running boards, get in the vehicle without them, but I found getting out of the vehicle using them was a little bit better because it's kind of a wide step.
Yeah.
So just sort of for my height, I can kind of just make the seat.
Yeah.
But some of my passengers it was a climb in.
Yeah.
And I know one person mentioned there's actually 2 grab handles on the passenger side in the front, one on the A-pillar and one sort of up in the roof is traditional. And they were using both of them to hoist themselves up in. So, and I know here, access is the thing with these running boards. Do you use them? Do you not use them? And again, it's really, I think, an individual thing. It depends on sort of how tall you are and your leg reach and things like that.
I find you're either using them and you need them because they're necessary, or they're too much and they put you above that roof line. I think the shape of the doors, it's just right with the running boards, and you're taller.
Yeah, but no matter what, it's a tall
climate.
step in. So yeah, you're going to
People
have
mentioned
to like
the cargo
razor
lift
blades.
over too.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, and of course, square, tons of cargo. There is some modest cargo behind the third row.
There is. I was able to use that, and I had to move some bigger stuff, so laid those
'cause you had
down,
people.
and both were okay.
Yep. Thoughts on controls? I know we also have a Nissan Murano we're testing currently, so there's been a lot of compare and contrast, mostly compare, but controls, Gabe, your thoughts?
Yeah, not a fan. I think the idea of having settings in the in the screen and in the cluster in front of you is a pretty dumb idea.
Yeah,
and
redundant.
Also the fact that on the steering wheel you have 2 squares and a thumb wheel that's kind of like diagonally angled.
Yep.
You have to have like the dexterity of a magician to control that.
While you're driving.
Yes, and so you have to pay attention and see which screen you're controlling with your thumb. Either it's a center screen or the cluster, and that is very fussy.
Yeah.
Requires a lot of distraction, a lot of eye off the road. So not a very good system there. And not to mention the gear selector / shifter, which is a push button, and it's very low.
Yeah.
So to do any kind of maneuver, reverse drive, parking maneuver is impossible without looking at it.
I noticed the reverse has a little raised area on it.
Yeah.
I think the intention is so you can do a little bit of find it without looking, but you got to know reverses, you got to know the order of them.
I just had
the others
trouble finding it physically on the
that's
console.
what
I would
Gabe's
just have to
saying,
look
slow.
every single time,
Yeah.
and then I could kind of work my way through it. But not my favorite shifter.
I'm not a big fan of the push
that
button. But
reverse button is not enough.
And one issue that everybody, and including myself, is connectivity. It connects, but it does not stay connected to the point where people were going to wired.
I went to wired over the weekend. Yeah,
And it still wasn't great.
every once in a while it drops out,
How
which is
old
annoying.
school to go to wired. Come on. But it did not stay connected. As soon as signal got low, a lot of them will hang on to it, even though you don't have a great connection, and it'll come back. This just dropped the whole thing.
Yeah, for me, both Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay, it's in and out for no rhyme or reason.
Yeah. Both of them. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Android and Apple. It didn't seem to matter. So Nissan, you need to do a little work on the connectivity of the Armada. But so in general, these cars, you think about who they're right for, and it draws. We got into an early conversation about this compare and contrast to the minivan. Like, why is this the better option than the minivan? And I mean, we're going to get to it. It's just image, but Mike, what would be if you needed this amount of people and this amount of size?
If I was going to move people and things
Yep.
on a regular basis, I would seriously consider a minivan.
Yeah.
People say they're not cool. I actually kind of like some of the minivans.
Yeah.
And I think, listen, I modify and practically ruin every car that I buy anyway.
You just wreck 'em.
So I'd probably put a set of wheels on a minivan and maybe even lower a little bit to add some cool points. But minivans are great at moving people and things. If you need to tow, then you need like a bigger
Yeah,
SUV or
that's
a truck or like a truck-based SUV. But if you're just moving some cargo and people, it's hard to beat a minivan.
Yeah, so 8,500 pounds towing on the Armada versus the max on the Voyager, I think, is 3,600. So more than double. Thoughts, minivan?
Well, these vehicles certainly have their purposes of towing and some
Clearance.
mild off-roading.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a boat and or you have an Airstream or something like that, then that kind of vehicle is appropriate. But for a soccer mobile, that's just cooler than the minivan because it has. I mean, it has more cachet. It has more swagger, of course. But that's a total overkill, and you're going to be better off with a minivan in terms of just functionality.
I said access, comfort, visibility, fuel economy. You have to nod to the minivan.
Oh, of course.
But what I did say is third rows. I think of, we have family friends. They have 3 sons, all over 6 foot tall. And like maybe this third row in something like the Armada or the Sequoia or the, Tahoe is a better option if you have grown sized children, not young ones. Minivans are great for the young ones because they jump right in. The access is so much better. But for adult size,
I did
kids
crawl
or
into
family,
the third row just to kind of try it out.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go for a ride, but just sitting back there in access, it was okay.
Yeah.
It's still a third row, but it's better than a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I just think it really comes down to people should just be sort of honest with themselves what they need versus what they want. It's okay to want things too, and like to want to have a car that you think looks cool.
Yeah.
I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would buy this one though over some of its competitors.
Yeah.
Either Wagoneer or Tahoe Suburban. I just don't know if this does it for me, but I definitely understand the appeal to it. This one definitely feels kind of upmarket and approaching that Infiniti level.
Yeah, and to your point, to bring it back around, lower volume than a lot of them. Maybe that's the deal. Is there a deal to be had because of the lower volume?
It's hard
Still
to say. I mean, when the
75,000.
car is brand new, usually no deals, but down the road, we'll see.
Yeah.
And you also might be the only one in the car pickup line too.
Right.
Trying to find the silver Tahoe when there's 6 of them, and you're in the one Armada. So
That's
there's
right.
a little bit of individuality
That's
there
right.
too.
You can actually find yourself
Yes.
in the school drop-off line. So, of course, the Armada's going in for its formal testing. So look for a full road test report on the Armada coming soon. So we're going to move on to our audience questions. As always, keep them coming. consumerreports.org/talkingcars. If we use your question on the show, you get that fancy Consumer Reports t-shirt that we will send you. You can share your size. So the first question today comes from Steve, and Steve said, in CR's recent online report of the 2025 Jeep Compass, it is apparent that the turn signals in both sound and feel are loathed with the fire of 1,000 suns. While I understand how, say, a brittle or cheap feeling control can let down the overall vibe of the interior fit and finish, I've never paid any mind to the sound that the turn signals make. So he says, just how bad are they? So just so you all can hear them, we are going to share this clip of the Compass's turn signals. You can make some judgments on your own. So take a listen.
What is that?
I thought the stock was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And
Again, going back to
and in my time in the Compass, I didn't necessarily notice the sound of the turn signals, but I went back out and sat in it when I got this question, like, let me go listen to them.
Yeah.
And they're not great.
Yeah.
We actually have a couple of cars I think that are worse as far as the noise goes, and I think it's because these are manufactured noises. Back in the day, you'd have a flasher relay that had a little piece of metal. It was actually a bimetal strip, and that would be what sort of turns the signals on and off with
So it was
current
a very-
flow. And that was the actual noise. It was like a snapping noise, sort of. And now they manufacture these noises,
Yeah.
and some of them are very electronic. They have like a little bit of static on the end to them. They're just not very pleasant.
Yeah, and this was very, and they're regulated, both frequency and volume, but there's wiggle room,
Yeah.
clearly. You can meet the standard and still have, I found them, and I had to laugh because I forget who I was with, my daughter, and she said, as I get older, they make fun of me and say, that I'm the woman who leaves her turn signals on. My daughter said, well, you won't leave those on now, will you? Because they're very prominent. So, Steve, it's one of those pet peeve things. Definitely, if you're thinking of a Compass, listen to them. Take a turn or two and see if they're going to bother you, because it's part of that livability for sure. Next question comes from Mike. Recently watched your YouTube video on the Mazda CX-90. I'm seriously considering one, but because I drive them for 10 years or more, I'm quite concerned about the multiple drive chains at the rear of the engine. These are serviced by removing the engine, which means dollars. If the chain doesn't wear, surely the guides will. Interested to find your thoughts on this potential costly problem. Certainly a service issue. I'm going to throw it to you. Mike to Mike.
Yeah, so Mike, that's a great question and a valid question.
Yeah.
And Mazda's not alone here. There are some manufacturers that are putting chains on the backside of the engine, which is between the engine and the transmission. And if you have to service them, everything comes out the bottom, separate the transmission, and then you get in there. So it is a lot of work. The idea behind this is that it's chains which are good for life. And
should be.
Yeah, should be. So, and I'll come back to that. But so hopefully you don't ever have to do this. That being said, a lot of these new cars are engine out for a lot of things anyway. So they come out pretty easily. It still costs money, obviously. But from like a technician's point of view, I don't actually mind pulling a lot of motors. Some are pretty terrible, but some, if you have like the right table, the hydraulic table, you can just drop it all out the bottom. Some of these you can have out in an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, and then you can do what you have to do without like leaning over fenders. Or think about like this Armada. I mean, the front of it's huge. I would actually hate to have to like do engine work on this thing, like up over the grill and over the fenders.
Yep.
If I had the choice of spending an hour and a half to drop the whole assembly out the bottom, I might do that anyway, just to make my job easier.
Yeah.
But now let's get back to the good for life thing.
Yeah. Is he right about the guides?
Well, guides are made of plastic, and they wear, but they don't really get like direct wear against the metal chain. They're lubricated, and usually it comes down to they get brittle over time from heat cycles, and they can start to break and fall apart. And that is a problem. And if you're going to do guides, you're going to replace the chain and the gears and everything like that. But this good for life thing, but when that life is over, it's over, and now you're looking at a big bill. Whereas, if you just had a timing belt on the front of the motor that was pretty easily serviceable, you service it 100,000 miles, you do the water pump at the same time, and it costs you $1,000 or something, and you just kind of move on. So I don't know that this would stop me from buying a CX-90. I don't know if this is, it is a consideration. I don't know if it's the only consideration, but I mean, the potential is there that down the road, Mike might be looking at, a pretty sizable repair bill.
Okay. So hopefully helpful, Mike to Mike. So the last question comes from Henry from Delaware. I have a bit of a first world problem. I am currently driving a Corvette C6 Z51 manual transmission as a daily driver. While I love the performance, handling, and storage space of the car, which I was surprised, I have two issues related to my height, 6'4". My knees are only 1 inch from the dash with the seat all the way back, and I have to crane my neck forward at intersections to see the traffic lights, as my head is very close to the roof. Can you think of a car that may fit a tall person better and is more or less as engaging and fun to drive in a spirited manner, is practical in storage, preferably a manual, and reliable? Oh, and under $35K. Used is okay. I was laughing because this sounds like Henry is our Mike, because he says he would drive a Corvette daily if needed. And we do have, Henry, a lot of content on best cars for tall drivers, but they typically don't include sports cars. So, Gabe, I'm going to start with you. Any thoughts for Henry on an alternative to his first world Corvette?
Yeah, first of all, this is a good problem to have. It's a rich people problem. So, let that be the only problem we have in the world. So I would lean towards a Cadillac CTS V for him. That Corvette engine, supercharged. You can get them. A few of them are out there with a manual. I don't know if you're fitting it below 35,000, and you might be looking at a 10-year-old car. So reliability is a bit of a loose term here. Second, the Chevy SS, also normally aspirated V8. Some of them are out there with the manual. Not the majority, of course, but they can be found. That's if I look back at cars we tested here in the last few years, that Chevy SS really stands out. We tested one 2014, I think, and it's a fun car. It's kind of like an incognito kind of car. You really fly under the radar.
Yep.
But what a car! It was made by Holden, GM's Australian division at the time. Now, the third option would be a Mustang GT, the V8. Here,
Mustang,
you can probably have more choices there. It would be easier to find. You can probably zero in on a 2019, 2020 maybe if you're lucky, and fit it under 35,000. So that, that car is enjoyable. It's very livable day to day. I don't think you're going to have the inconvenience of craning under
Right.
traffic lights that you have with the Corvette.
I was thinking too, I did have Mustang too as an alternative. Well, I'll share mine in a minute, but I was thinking how hard Mustang manuals used to be. It was like a workout in quads every time you drove the car. But
And
both
the
of them,
clutch.
Corvette, Mustang, so easy to drive now. The manuals are so good. Being a tall guy, what were your thoughts? for
So,
Henry?
I mean, first off, Henry, awesome job on the C6 Corvette. They're a lot of fun,
See?
and you're
You
a champ
are,
for
Mike.
dailying that. So, I'm going to sound like Gabe here. CTSV was my first choice. I could not find one that was a 6-speed for in that $35,000 range.
Yeah.
So then I went to the Chevy SS, which is awesome, and I did see some at $36,000, $37,000 with a 6-speed. Again, under the radar, really great car. You get most of the Corvette experience. Corvettes are surprisingly roomy in the back. You can put a lot of stuff in them. The SS is as well. But I understand the height issue. And the only other thing I would say is the C6 Corvette is a big step up from the C5. The seats are kind of the worst part of that car.
Yeah.
I would almost investigate swapping the seats out. An aftermarket seat with some rails that kind of bring it down just a little bit
Yep.
if you do really love that Corvette. But I mean,
Yep.
that's going down the rabbit hole, and some people don't want to do that, and I get that.
Yep.
So if you just want to replace this Corvette with a car that's sort of turnkey ready to go, the Chevrolet SS would be my choice.
Yeah, you're both on the same page. I'll admit, mine's a big departure, but I did inquire with Ryan, who's 6'2", to get some kind of basis, in that I said, how about something much smaller, still nimble, still manual, affordable and reliable in like the Toyota 86. So the reason I reached out to Ryan is they're currently using those for their ultra high performance tire test program. So Ryan has a lot of seat time in a Toyota 86. And he says, I actually fit very well. He told stories. There were tests years ago, Gabe, where we had to wear helmets, or we asked our drivers to wear helmets. And Ryan said, I was always surprised I could fit in a Toyota 86 with a helmet on and still have plenty of headroom. It is not a Corvette, but 30 new. The base price new is 30, so I think you don't have to go as many years back to get one that's under 30. So I don't know how acceptable a jump is, from a Chevy to a Ford or from a Chevy to a Toyota, but I think that would tick the boxes, Henry, for you. Again, much smaller car, but I think there's enough practicality there to make it a daily driver. So food for thought for you. Again, keep the questions coming. That will do it for this episode. As always, keep watching, keep listening, and we'll see you next time.